Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to episode 44 of the Coffee Squad podcast. We are starting our 10-part security series discussing the basic security principles that we think everyone should know. And so we've been talking, I think, all of last year of kind of on a higher level, and we're just going to break it down and talk about just general basic physical security principles. And so with that, we have a great guest this week, a good buddy of mine, Josh Mohr, out of SoCal. And it was really Josh who kind of brought this up to me a few months ago, got me on the phone, listened to the podcast, like, hey, man, can you guys just bring it down a little bit? So that's what we're doing. We're going to kick off this podcast and kind of have this talk with Josh and other people I've talked to besides Josh who listen to the podcast a little bit, say the same thing of, can you guys just break it down? So hopefully Josh kind of helps keep us in check over this next little 10-part series that we're doing. So let me introduce Josh. I know him very well. Will doesn't really know him, and our listeners don't know him unless you're a surfer and a longboard surfer out in Southern California. But Josh grew up in Southern California. Really cool story that I didn't know about till I read your bio is that you grew up in Fullerton, and you had gotten to surfing with you and your buddies. You used to get on the bus, get enough food and money to get on the bus and go down to Huntington Beach and surf. And that's what you did. You spent your weekends doing that. And you fell in love with it and a passion for it. And as years went on, you got, better and better. And then you started competing in amateur events. You started winning those on the West Coast there in Hawaii. And then you just turned pro and started rocking it. So, Josh, you have 4 U.S. professional surfing titles. He's an amazing surfer. I mean, I've surfed with him a lot. Josh has probably pushed me into one of the best waves that I've ridden there in Huntington. That was about a year or so ago. And just a good dude. So he's a real estate agent. You own a real estate company, and you own a few other companies, and you're married. Happy birthday to your wife yesterday. And you have some children. So, Josh, what did I miss about you, and what should our listeners know about you?
Ah, man, you hit it on the head. I mean, the biggest thing for me is just experiences. And I think that's what surfing provided my whole life, especially growing up, not by the beach. The experience of getting to the beach. It took us an hour plus to get there. And, I think just like anything, we do that's active, we all are active and outdoorsmen and stuff like that. And I think part of doing stuff like that is the lead up. Right. It's the feeling you get when you're kind of like, man, okay, in an hour, I'm going to be doing this or whatever. And it's just that lead up and with buddies. And I think that's a lot of the kids that grew up by the beach, they could just walk out of their house, jam down there. They're there in 5 minutes. There wasn't as much of that. And I think for me, that's what really captured me was just the whole overall experience of it. The adventure of trying to find a way to the beach, then you finally get there and the adventure of being there. And then the whole way home, talking story and you have that hour or 2 hours, just on the way home, just talking about your day. And and that rolls into every other thing that I've ever done in my life is just trying to get those great experiences with good people and be outdoors.
Well, that's awesome. I started surfing in high school. My first time surfing was San Onofre, just south of you, and got hooked. And I lived in Northern California in Sacramento. And my brother had this piece of crap blue Toyota Corolla wagon, and he was in college. But hey, that's what we had. That was our vehicle to get down to Santa Cruz, which was a 3-hour ride. And so me, my brother, and 2 of our other buddies, and we'd go down and we'd stay the night because it's such a long drive on the weekend. So we usually leave Friday night and, Saturday and come back Sunday evening. But I remember we used to have this whole deal in Santa Cruz where we'd put some 1s and 5s, crumple them up, put them in a pocket, and we'd just go to the hotel or motel and like, hey, this is all we got for the night. And all 4 of us would jam in the room. We used to have like cards up, like as you're driving on 17 there through the mountains. Like if you saw a hot girl, you'd like give her a 10 or a 9 or a 5 or a 1. And one of the best was like, there's a girl we really thought was pretty. So I'm like at the window, like a 10. And again, this is a piece of crap blue Toyota Corolla wagon, 4 surfboards on top, and like 10. She finally gets down on 17 and the first gas station gets out, man. And she was a big thing. And it's like, go.
That's great.
So what a great way to kick off the new year, right? With some good memories here. So for our listeners out there, we are the Coffee Squad. We're going to talk a little bit about coffee. Will's going to wow everyone with his fine taste in coffee. And then we're going to talk about things that are going around the world. And then we're going to jump into the topic, which is the security series and what it is and why we're doing it. So, Will, what are you drinking?
All right, here we go. You ready? So, it's
Josh. So, real quick,
go ahead.
If it's something snotty or snooty, we always say pinkies up. So, if you just see the pinky up, man, just throw the pinky up if you think it's a little snotty.
So this is from the Ronin factory out of San Diego, California. It's called Narnia, and it is a medium roast coffee, kind of earthy. It says that Sasquatch or Yeti or whatever you want to call it is the one who brews it for you. So pretty good. You know, I found this company online, ended up trying their coffee, and I'm pretty happy with it. Then I got my regular good old H2O next to me.
Nice.
What kind of a Bengal spice tea chai.
If we were doing this in the morning, it would be like a chai tea or Bengal spice. But I told you I started like that keto diet.
Yeah.
Josh is tired of seeing my big gut in a wetsuit, so I'm drinking that second burrito, the Momenti. It's pretty good, the Clementine Peach. So
that's got sugar in it, right?
It has a little bit. Hey, you can get up to like 30 grams, I think, of carbs a day on keto starting off. So yeah, and then of course I started the new year.
Did you?
So I mean, I started after the playoff games because you can't do New Year's, Christmas, and everything.
Yeah.
My wife's like, "Come on!" I'm like, "No way!" So she did buy me a Hydro, the rowing machine.
Yeah.
For my birthday and Christmas, and I told her like, "Hey, let's slowly work into that." So have the Hydro now, slowly working into the diet. But I've done keto before. It's a good, quick way to lose weight. If you're a little chubby like me. But it wouldn't be a lifestyle, I don't think, I think once you drop the weight, become more active, it's easier to keep the weight off. So
for sure.
What about you, Josh? What are you drinking this morning?
Lavazza. I got that Italian roast Lavazza. It's good. It's yeah, we tend to, and we kind of keep it simple. I'm not, I don't explore too much, although I'd like to, I wouldn't mind, but yeah, the Lavazza is awesome.
I'm kind of, I guess you could call, I don't want to say I'm a coffee snob or a beer snob or whatever, but I like to try something new. I don't want to be, I have my favorites that I go back to.
What do you use to brew it with? What kind of, do you have a good machine, or what do you?
So I have a drip, I have a Keurig, I have a AeroPress, I have a pour over. I think that's it. I have like 3 or 4 different methods of brewing, so it just kind of depends.
But it's like surfboards, right? You can't have
that. But he's not a coffee snob. He just said that. Like, yeah, man. I mean, this is tame, Josh. Normally he's like, it has a hint of cardamom in there, a little black pepper, he's yeah. So
pinky's out, right?
Yeah.
You gotta enjoy the finer things in life. You enjoy your special water. I'll enjoy my coffee.
There you go.
Fair enough. So,
so it's been a while since we've been on like I guess a podcast, right? So it's been a while. We haven't really talked. So everything that's kind of going on during the world, I guess we kind of have to talk about that. So Jake, what's kind of your opinion on the hot mess that was happening this week?
This week or yesterday?
Yesterday.
So. For our listeners that maybe aren't up on the news, and for international listeners, some protesters, some rioters broke into the state capitol during a joint session yesterday. So So a female was shot and killed. 3 other people died of other medical emergencies there. Numerous cops were injured. The Senate and Congress had to be evacuated, were placed on a lockdown. So I was actually on a conference call, and I had like the news kind of just streaming. I remember kind of looking up and like I couldn't even focus. It reminded me almost of like 9/11 when the second plane hit the tower. Of like, is this crap really happening? Is this really happening in our country?
It reminded me of scenes growing up. You watch like the UK or the Middle East, their political stuff, people throwing chairs and stuff, and it just kind of reminded me of that.
I was in Afghanistan for 2 of their elections, and just I don't want, we try to stay very like apolitical here, and there's a time and a place for that. And I don't want to go in the political discussion of left versus right or any of that. But what I saw yesterday literally reminded me of my times in Afghanistan and other third world countries, of the way they acted, like you said, Will. So to me, it was disgusting, it was disappointing. And the sad part is, it's you had this look like a few 100,000 people there. Protesting, wanting their voices heard, which, hey, I'm all for, whether I agree with it or disagree. I think that's a great thing about this country, is we should be allowed to have a conversation, an opinion, and voice our grievances to the politicians, right? They do work for us. And so I guess the biggest, besides what they did and what the actions that happened there last night, I was watching C-SPAN, and I was hoping that you would see a congressman or a senator almost reflect back on not just this last 4 years, but just our political tension in this country over the last few decades, I would say. And not one of them that I heard, and I could have missed it, but not one of them that I heard actually got up and said, hey, they said what a travesty it was yesterday and how awful it was. And then they, went back to the finger pointing, but not one of them actually said, you know what? If we look back over the summer, we had the Black Lives Movement and Antifa voice their grievances. Yesterday, and these last few weeks, we've had the Trump supporters and the MAGA supporters with Antifa mixed in. That's, I think a lot of people need to realize, like, Antifa is in there, like, stirring the pot on both sides. But not one of these congressmen or senators got up there and said, you know what, maybe it's time we need to reflect on ourselves, on our political institution on both sides of the aisle, and reflect of the will of the American people. And look at both sides. You have one on the left that's making their grievances. You have one on the right making their grievances. No one's happy. And so there's this huge undercurrent in our country right now where people aren't putting up with it anymore. To me, it's very scary. It is DC's locked down now till after the inauguration. Other cities, I just talked to my brother in Sacramento. He works downtown. He's not allowed to go to his office right now. State capitals are having the same thing. And so I think it's a shame. I think it's a shame, and I wish our politicians would listen and quit pointing the finger, like do a self-reflection of themselves. They represent the people. It almost reminds, that's a whole nother podcast.
Hey, Jake, how did it happen? Like, literally, how did they get into the Capitol? How did they allow that to happen?
They just overwhelmed them by numbers.
That many people?
Yeah.
I mean, I hate pointing fingers, right? I like, everyone's like, oh, the DC police chief's going to get fired. The Capitol police chief's going to get fired. Secret Service. So I lived in DC when I was at Walter Reed for almost a year. I was probably 10 minutes from the mall. In order to have any type of rally like that, I mean, that was a massive rally.
Massive.
You have to have permits. And so
they were expecting like 30,000 people, and it ended up being over 100,000. So I think they just were underestimating and overwhelmed.
Well, there's my little sister's an FBI agent. I had a conversation with her last night, and she's out on the West Coast, but there's no way our intelligence community, whether it was local law enforcement, federal, didn't know that the amount of people that were coming. And I just don't think they were staffed well enough. And quite honestly, with that many people, I mean, I don't think that they wanted the National Guard, everyone out there, because they probably thought it was just going to be a peaceful protest.
Sure.
Do I think President Trump incited a riot and was like, hey, go burn down the Capitol? I watched his speech. He's like, let's go march down to the Capitol. I can't speak for the guy. I wasn't in his mind or in his heart, but I truly don't think a person in their right mind is going to incite violence, especially one who may want to have political aspirations down the road. I think his political career is completely crashed and burned now because of actions of a few people yesterday. But I mean, and I think it's sad because you had a few hundred people act like complete jackasses and clowns that ruined it for the other hundreds of thousands of people that were there.
So people hear what they want to hear and interpret what they want to interpret. So, why normal people like us who, whatever, we didn't interpret it like that. We heard it, but these extremists and these other people that want to hear what he said as a rallying cry or whatever, I think they interpreted it that way. So I don't know that he could have said or done anything other than, well, I mean, I don't know. That's just another conversation. But people are going to hear what they want to hear and do what they want to do. So
yeah, I just don't think they had enough police officers and people there to be able to push them back. Whether that was done on purpose or not, I don't know.
Well, and it could have been. I mean, so far, at least from what I see, most, if not all, of the Trump rallies have been peaceful. So maybe they weren't anticipating it not being peaceful. Maybe they're like, okay, we're going to have X amount of people, but history shows so far those people have been peaceful.
Yep.
But
and again, so we're talking resources, right? So here are these large cities. I mean, I think every large city across the U.S. is hurting financially because of the tax revenue coming in. You don't have as many people. I mean, DC, besides being the capital of our country, it's a huge tourist destination.
Yeah.
And so you don't have as nearly many people. So I think as a leader, as a average person, it's easy to point the finger. And I think leaders are great at pointing the fingers at each other. But sometimes we take ourselves back and like, hey, if I was in their shoes and I have a budget, I look at, like Josh said, the historical perspective of these rallies. They've been peaceful. They've almost been jovial, I would say. It's almost like going to a rock concert. I don't know. I hope cooler heads prevail. And I really, really, plead. And I reached out to my senator today. Like, hey, I hope this is self-reflection on your part and everyone else's part. It'll probably hit delete. One of his aides will read it like, wow, this guy's a nut job. But I really hope it's a self-reflection for our politicians and the country as a whole. Again, there's people on the right who are poking the bear with Black Lives Matter and that whole thing. And now the right just did that. And so hopefully everyone can look like, hey, I may not agree with your political stance or some of your views, but let's get back to having a discussion. I don't know how you guys are raised, but I was always told you don't talk about religion, politics, or money at the dinner table. And maybe that's something that you do start talking about, because if you can have a discussion within your family and disagreements there, then maybe you could actually have a decent conversation on the outside. I don't know.
Well, I think part of the problem is in this new cancel culture that if your opinion it doesn't conform with the majority, you're labeled as wrong or non-PC, and your opinion doesn't matter anymore. And I don't think that's right. I think everybody has an opinion and everybody should be heard. So, I mean, with the exception,
I would say amen to that.
With the exception of
a woman,
with the exception of the extremists and stuff, there's obviously hate speech and stuff like that. But I'm talking just one opinion to another. We should be able to have a conversation without getting angry, without getting heated, without throwing blows or whatever. So
isn't that called respect, where you can kind of respect somebody else's ability to have a different opinion and
And so I think this kind of goes into all that, right? Like respect and values, the value system of today, right? Instant gratification. If I don't get my way, I see it with little kids. I mean, I live in a little snotty-nosed golf resort community here in Pinehurst, and I can't tell you how many 16-year-old kids and little snotty punk kids that will throw a little fit because they don't get what they want. And now they're becoming adults, and it's you see grown adults throwing fits because they didn't get their way.
Jake, you're going to be the old man in 20 years telling kids to get off your grass.
Luckily, I don't have grass, but I am that old man. Like, hey, get off my property. No, literally, I was at the Pinehurst Resort when they had the international kids open here, and I literally watched a kid. He wanted some shirt and the clothing. I think I was grabbing something for Danny when I came out there last, and this kid threw a fit on the ground. I mean, the kid's probably 15, 16 years old, and I just look at the parents like, are you kidding me? How old's this kid? And the dad's like, I don't know what to do. I was like, I'd kick his ass. That's what I would do. But I don't know, man. There's more there's so many different issues and problems with it. I hope cooler heads prevail and people can realize that, hey, we still have the best country, but what makes it a great country is slowly eroding away, and we're not going to have a country eventually if we keep going at that. And then what does that look like? We have plenty of examples out there of what that could look like. And I've been to quite a few of them, and you don't want that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right, Debbie Downer.
Will, you brought it up, man. So let's talk about security and why we're doing this series. So, Josh, can you explain to listeners and viewers out there, why you kind of reached out to me in that conversation and why you think it's important for us to kind of bring it down a little bit.
Yeah. No, I remember, listening to the podcast that you guys were doing, and I was super interested in them. And as I was listening, I had a ton of questions, right? And I just thought that, security means so much, it's such a broad topic, right? And you guys obviously have had experiences that most normal humans have not had, in terms of just dealing with scenarios that are, crazy, right? So, but at the same time, real life can get crazy, right? Whether it's, your house or, parking in a parking structure. I started just thinking about all these normal everyday scenarios that an everyday person would experience, right? And I thought it would be really important to talk about some of that stuff so that your audience, once again, you could relate to just that everyday stuff, right? The everyday scenarios, whether it's a financial risk of something or internet breach of something, or your bank account getting hacked, or your Facebook page getting hacked, or like I said, your wife parking in a parking structure later at night, coming back from a restaurant or something like that, going into a dark parking structure. What does she need to look out for? How, she needs to pay attention to her surroundings. How are you gonna, how are you gonna deal with those situations? I mean, my wife deals with that. We own a restaurant downtown Huntington Beach, and oftentimes 11, 12 at night, she's leaving the restaurant. She's by herself. She's walking to the parking structure. I want her to be safe. You know what I mean? And I want to I would love to hear from guys like you, what she should be doing, what she should be looking out for. Same thing with your house. How do you protect your house? Some people live in real suburban areas. Other people live out, in the country. What do we need to be doing?
Yeah.
So I just thought about all those things as you guys were talking, going, man, we need to cover that. I need to hear about it. I need to learn. I'd love other people to learn. I mean, it's important.
So yeah. I mean, that was, I think, Josh, when we had that conversation, it was like, it made the podcast. So I reached out to Will and like, hey man, we got to do this like basic security 101 series. And we started talking about it and building out an outline and, what do we need to add? And I reached out to other buddies of mine, Adam Prince, another great guy, a physical security guru, of, hey, what do you think about this? And I reached out to Tim, a cybersecurity expert, works for one of the major corporations. Like, hey, how can you help get on this podcast? And not just a podcast. Will's, has created a web series too to go along with this home security, physical security 101 thing. It's not just home security. We're talking small businesses and other stuff, right? Just everyday life security, physical security. And so that's what this podcast series is going to be about. The web series is going to be about. The web series is going to kind of have a little bit more information and kind of some how-tos, videos to go along with it. But Josh, yeah, when you had that conversation, it really like kind of hit a light bulb, went off. Like, we can have some higher level discussions, but kind of like surfing, Josh. Like surfing. So like if anyone's, Google Josh Mohr. You can watch him on the Huntington Beach like surf camp. Sometimes it looks like Josh is dancing on the waves. It's so effortless. It's beautiful. And I think sometimes being in the realm of security, yeah, it is beautiful. In the security realm, you forget or you take for granted what you already know. And I think this is a great series to do that. So, for our listeners out there, Will was in the Army. Then he got out. He was a police officer, a SWAT officer, narcotics officer, before he got severely injured. I did years as a Green Beret, and then I got out and started doing security consulting for large companies and ultra high net worth individuals. And so I guess ever since the military, I've always been in the security mindset, and you kind of sometimes just blow past some of the simple stuff. And so this podcast, the series, is going to kind of, with our listeners and our viewers out there, just build that foundation. You don't have to come from a security background to listen to this and understand it. We're going to break it down real simple and basic. So you can take it home and apply it. And that's what we hope to get out of this. So thanks, Josh. Thanks for bringing that up to our attention.
Thank you. Yeah. So once Jake brought this to me, I started thinking about it, and it made a lot of sense, because I remember when I was back in college, I had the professor, super smart, went to Yale, Harvard, had degrees from both of them, and genetics. And she was just awesome. She knew genetics inside and out. But
Was she trying to fix you or what?
no, this is when I was in college. I was trying to learn about stuff, trying to learn it good. But she was so smart that for me anyways, it was a hard time to kind of talk down to my level, because it was an introductory genetics class, but she was so high level that she was talking about things that the class had never even heard of. And we're like, whoa, wait, what's that? So it took a little bit of time throughout the semester before we kind of got back and we were able to understand what she was talking about. It made me think about that when you brought this up to me. I was like, man, that's a great idea. We're definitely going to do this. So thank you.
So it brings up a good point of, even the relationship to surfing or anything else that someone does really well, right? That, when you see them do it, it looks effortless. And oftentimes the best teachers of anything are the ones that can really dumb it down, right? They can sort of break apart what they do so easily and then explain the basics of that to somebody else. So I appreciate you guys doing this. It's cool.
Yeah. So when we talk about security, right, and like what is it? Everyone asks, like my mom constantly asks me, so what do you do? And I try to tell her, and she's like, and it's she has this whole other image of what I do. I think she saw like me being in the military and stuff. But when we talk security, and we say the word security, like Josh said, it's very broad and wide. But how I look at security is really it's the state of being free from danger or a threat. And so I think for our listeners out there and viewers as well, like if you just keep that in mind, and the reality is there's always a threat out there, and so how do you constantly, I'm not saying you have to be paranoid and put your tinfoil hat on and, walk around with an AR, but just know your threat, know your environment, know what your assets are. And we're going to talk about, what an asset is and what a risk is and what a threat is and what a vulnerability is. We're going to talk about this throughout this whole podcast series. We're not going to talk about it today in depth. We're just kind of giving an overview of what we're going to talk about in the podcast and web series. So if we kind of stick with that definition of, the state of security of what it is, being free from a threat, we can kind of all have that mutual understanding and go from there.
Yep. So you brought up assets, but we're in risk, threats, vulnerabilities. We're also going to talk about Jake's favorite term, due diligence. We're going to kind of go over that and how to do it and what it is exactly. We're going to discuss the difference between physical security, human security, and technical security, because I think, like you said, security kind of is a broad term, and a lot of people don't know exactly how it's broken down.
Yeah, same with the term due diligence, right? Everyone's like, what's due diligence? Well, I do due diligence reports for people all the time, for large companies, on persons, on entities. But that due diligence is completely different than some of the it's really just doing your homework, doing your research, whether you're buying a car. Everyone does. Josh, you're a real estate agent. Do you think your clients do their due diligence and research you and your company?
Of course.
They should, right?
In the areas they want to move into, they're pulling up reports and, looking at crime statistics and, that stuff for sure.
And so you as a real estate agent, you're doing the same thing, right? If you have a certain client that has a certain budget and they say, hey, these are the parameters I'm looking at. Well, if crime's a big deal to them, you're going to use some type of application out there, and we'll talk about some of these applications, these crime applications that you can find and that you can use if you're going to go buy a home, or you're going to rent an office building. You're going to have an office building built in a certain location. So that to me is doing your due diligence, whether you're buying a car, a home, anything, anything that you're going to put time, money, and energy into, you should always, in my opinion, do your homework on. So due diligence is just a fancy word for saying doing your homework. Will, you with us? Or you?
Yeah, I'm still here. You froze for a second. Yeah, you froze on my. Yes, we both froze. Okay.
So we'll go over our basic terminology, and then after that, we're going to kind of jump into physical security, and we're going to do this in a 2-part series. And Adam, who I just spoke of a little bit ago, we're going to talk about what physical security is, because in the security overall, if you look at security, there's kind of 3 aspects. There's the human aspect, right? There's the technical side, and now I just totally dropped it. And then there's the physical side, right? And so the technical side, we're going to talk about a little bit later on down in February with a cybersecurity expert. And he's going to talk to us about your bank accounts, your social media, your routers, and everything else like that. But on the physical side, we're going to have Adam talk to us about identifying what an asset is, give that definition out there. We're going to talk about in physical security, there's the 4 Ds when it comes to security, which is deter, detect, delay, and defend. And how those, you can use those at your home, you can use them at your business, you can use them wherever you go. So if you keep those 4 things in mind, those 4 Ds, we're going to talk about that. We're talking about layered security. We're going to talk about how to use lighting, whether it's lighting on your building or landscape lighting. I love landscape lighting. I think it's great. I think it's a great tool that is pretty cheap and inexpensive that a lot of people can use. And, lighting is a good deterrent out there. We're going to talk a little bit about cameras. We're going to have a good buddy of mine, Isaiah, who does a lot with big companies, ultra high net worth individuals, their alarm systems in their homes and their businesses, kind of talk about us. And he's going to break it down, hopefully really simple for us to understand does everyone need an alarm system? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Do you need a camera in every room in your home or your business? It depends on what you need. So I hope our listeners are going to take this whole series and be able to apply it to some aspect or part of their life.
Yep. And don't forget, we're having Scott come on, talk about social media. So we'll be able to show you a little bit how to lock down your social media. So especially when you travel, a lot of people don't think about when they travel, what to do with their social media. They just stay on it. There's a lot of threats and vulnerabilities with that. And like we said, have Isaiah coming on about the alarm systems and going to break that down for us. Then we're going to start talking about the routines. People get set in their ways and their routines, and that's kind of it's nice to have that routine down, but it can also be a threat.
And look, we're all guilty of it. Yeah. Josh, I've been to your guys' restaurant. It's a great location. And would you say Huntington Beach has probably changed over the last 3 to 5 years, especially with the homeless population and everything else going on around there?
Absolutely. Yeah, we just had an incident the other day where a homeless guy backed a gal into a corner. She was running a retail store and backed her into the corner, kind of where the dressing rooms are, and scared the crap out of her. And it's just, that stuff's happening on a more frequent basis now. There's just a lot of people down there, a lot of people from out of town, and it's just, it's definitely it's changed a lot.
So,
all big cities have, not that we're a big city, but all cities that have that draw, whether it's, big city environment or beach town or something like that. They're going to attract the riffraff.
Yeah. When I was out there last in November, I was at Cold Stone. No more Cold Stone right now for me. But I was there with a physical therapist and the photographer, Kelson.
Yep.
And homeless guy, he was on something, went to Kelson's like, hey, I want some ice cream. Kelson's like, yeah, nope. The dude passed me and went to the female physical therapist. And he's like, buy me some ice cream. I was like, dude, get out of here, But I was expecting to throw down. The guy gave me that crazy eyed look like, am I going to tangle with a one-legged dude? But so understanding the laws and everything that's going on around there and understanding your environment and our environments are constantly changing. Nothing ever stays the same. So how do we adjust to that, to those environments that are constantly around us? And we talked about routine. We're all guilty of it. When I used to work, I used to park in my same parking spot, do the same thing because a routine is that kind of helps us get on with our day. And when you get out of your routine, you feel like you're in a crazy spiral funk. So how do you kind of stay in that routine, but change it up a little bit and keep yourself safe? And, always keep your head on the swivel. That's what I tell people, female or male, doesn't matter. If you constantly you walk like you know what you're doing, and you don't have to constantly move your head, but just look in the mirrors, look at stuff, and you're less likely. Most people want to target, if you're going to be not all victims, but some of the victims, they're targeted because they're easy. It's an easy prey. It's
crime of opportunity. Most crimes are crimes of opportunity when it comes to strong arm stuff.
What's funny too is there's a fine line between being paranoid and being too comfortable, right? It's just like anything. You got to have that balance, right? It's just a fine line.
Yeah, for sure. So, and then
it's a lot of times nowadays, everybody with their phone and stuff, they're either listening to music or their heads down, texting or whatever. And, that's opening yourself up. Yeah, unaware. Just simple awareness goes a long way.
Yeah.
So, and then we're going to talk about finally like home security. When we say home security, we're not just talking about your home, but just kind of self-defense. Will's not going to get in his Krav Maga outfit and show us how to do some moves, but we're going to talk about weapons, whether it's a firearm or a taser, and then knowing how to, what a responsible gun owner, weapons owner, whatever, how to be responsible about the training you should get, and most importantly, I think is the mindset. And so, and we're not going to go over all 50 states or all the countries and the rules and regulations of carrying a firearm or not, because that take a whole year to discuss for each one. But, what we always tell people, and you're going to hear me say this term a lot, due diligence, man, do your due diligence, know what you're allowed to carry, what you can carry, make sure, just because Will or I or Josh or any of our guests come on here and say it, research it, make sure that that's the truth, that we're not just speaking out of our butt, So there's a personal responsibility that comes with all this as well, with any of it. So, and then we'll probably, Josh, if you don't mind, at the end, we'll kind of do a recap, with you and like, hey, did we hit, did we reach the mark? And for our listeners and viewers out there, please, Will's done a great job creating a website for us, the coffeesquadpodcast.com. You can leave comments. You can email us. So if you have any other concerns or want us to talk about something, post it up there. Let us know. We will be more than willing to give you the information. Look, if you're a small business and you can't afford a security consultant, right? It's not cheap. Security is an expensive endeavor. Reach out to us. Be glad to help you, point you in the right direction, give you some tips and where you can find that information. Yeah,
you can reach out on our Facebook page, Coffee Squad Podcast, on Instagram, Coffee Squad Podcast. Go to coffeesquadpodcast.com and email us. I mean, there's definitely multiple different platforms you can reach us at, and we're more than willing to help. That's how Josh has a relationship with Jake, but obviously he reached out, and that's kind of why we're doing this episode. Yeah. We had another guy reach out, wants to come on the show later on this year, so it's gonna be a good show. So we're always looking for stuff like that. So yeah.
Josh, you've kind of seen the outline. Anything that you think we're missing or that you want us to talk about a little bit more?
No, I just find that, sometimes I'll relate to things that are where where you could give examples of stuff. So I would just recommend or suggest just using kind of real world examples in your approach to things, like how you would solve an issue and stuff like that. Just relate it to things that we know of, like I was giving an example of my wife walking into a parking structure, That's I think that'd be great, especially for a layman like me to kind of go, okay, I can apply that to this.
Yeah. And like we said, right? Like, so Will's experience and my experiences and where Will lives and where I live and where Josh lives, it's 3 different communities. And I think, Will, you and I talked about this earlier in the week. Some of us, the practitioners, right, we're some of the worst when it comes in our personal lives, right? I mean, there's times where, I know my community. Is there crime here? Yes. Is it very little? Absolutely. But I leave my garage door open. I don't check my windows and my doors whenever I leave. The only time I have an alarm system, the only time I really set is when I'm going on vacation, and so it pauses, every time I do this, like, hey, am I being a hypocrite?
So do as I say, not as I do.
So, but again, it's on each individual, right? Know your environment, know your circumstances, and know your assets, what you're trying to protect. For me, someone could come in here and ransack my whole entire house. And they could take anything and everything. I have insurance. It'll be covered, but to someone else, that is a much bigger deal than it is to me.
Yeah, so I grew up in the middle of Montana, 20 acres. My nearest neighbor was over a mile away. We never locked our door at our house because you didn't need to. Crime was non-existent essentially out there. Now, when I got in the military and I lived in Fayetteville, I locked everything, because I adapted to my surroundings. So
I put a claymore on the front door, man. So they open up, boom. Every house I ever had in Fayetteville, every house I rented or apartment got broken into.
Yeah, I mean, it happens quite a bit down there, and so it's just adapting to your environment and knowing your surroundings and being able to adapt and know what's going on. So,
and I think to make the reinforce your point of having the viewers or people make their own decisions too. I mean, it's sort of the same concept of, should I own a gun or should I not own a gun, right? guns are not for everybody. If you're not comfortable owning a gun or not comfortable handling a gun, you shouldn't own a gun. So, I mean, it's not a benefit to you if you can't use it,
Yeah.
So I think that's another important point that you guys touch on.
100%. So you look at there's that shooting in the church over the weekend in Texas where the pastor, there's a felon or a suspect that I think it was armed robbery or something. The police were chasing him. They lost him. I guess he's hiding in the bathroom. The pastor found it, pulled a gun, and the gun was actually turned and used on the pastor. I'm not saying the pastor shouldn't have owned a gun. I'm not saying that whatsoever. I'm just saying if you're going to be a gun owner, train with it, use it. I'll tell you right now, I haven't shot a pistol in probably over a year and a half, 2 years. So if you had me running through a house right now shooting, I'm going to be rusty as crap. But I'll tell you, I'm probably better than 90% of the other people out there that carry a gun and do it.
Yeah.
However, I know my skill sets. It's like surfing, right? I wouldn't recommend anyone go out surfing if they're terrified of the water, getting drug on, or if they can't even swim.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's just a bad idea to do. So owning a gun or a firearm or any type of defensive device, or it could be used offensively, but for a defensive device, know it, be intimate with it, love it. That it's a responsibility that you have, and it's a serious responsibility. And then we'll talk about insurance too, because just because you own a firearm and you are protecting yourself, even with your own home, and it's legally justified, there's ramifications that a lot of people don't realize that are going to happen. You're seeing justified shootings, and now the families are being sued because they are protecting themselves, so be prepared for that. So I think this is going to be a great podcast series. I'm really excited. And Josh, I can't thank you enough for kind of bringing it to our attention.
My pleasure. Yeah, I'm glad you guys are doing it. Like I said, it's a huge service to us all. So,
Josh, I know it's almost afternoon time. I know you're thinking about catching some waves. I don't want to take up too much of your time, man. I definitely appreciate it and look forward to having you back and getting your input on this as we go through and then wrapping it up with you. So thank you very much.
Pleasure. I look forward to the podcast. I'm excited to listen to it.
Awesome. So, thank you very much. Like I said, like Jake said, thank you for the idea and everything. I think we're gonna have a good time with it across all social media. Be on the lookout for all that stuff. Make sure to follow us and like us and all that good stuff. You can find everything you need to know at coffeesquadpodcast.com. Jake, it's good talking to you today.
Yes. Well, good with you. Thanks for making it so serious. And again, political views aside and everything, we do live in what I consider the greatest country. And I hope everyone just kind of takes a breath right now and pauses for a moment and say, hey, are my views really worth all this? There's certain things that are fighting for, but let's calm it down a little bit.
Cooler heads prevail. So
we're all citizens first. So, cool, Josh. Enjoy the waves. I'll pull up Surf Cam and see if I can find you out there. You surf from the north side or south side?
Probably the north side.
Yeah. There you go. Nice.
Cool. Well, cool. Thanks, bud. Appreciate it, man.
Right on, bro.
All right. See you guys. You guys have a good one. We'll talk to you guys later.
Thank you very much.
Bye.